Every 34 seconds, someone in the United States has a heart attack. One person, every 34 seconds. All day, every day. While you've been watching this video, it's already happened several times. We have more cardiac medications, more statin prescriptions, more bypass surgeries, more cardiologists per capita than any civilization in history. And we still have more heart disease than any civilization in history. Something is wrong with that equation. And somewhere in the gap between what we're doing and what's actually working, there's a much older story. One that starts not in a cardiology ward, but in an olive grove, in a barley field, in a vineyard on a hillside above the Sea of Galilee, in a garden where a woman grew up watching her grandmother grind spices the same way her grandmother's grandmother had. This is about 10 foods from that world. What they were, where they grew, how people actually ate them every day, and what modern cardiology has quietly confirmed about what they were doing to the arteries of the people who never stopped eating them. Let's start with the one that was everywhere. 1. Olive oil. It appears more than 140 times in Scripture. Exodus 27:20, Psalm 23:5, Luke 10:34, where the Good Samaritan pours it directly onto open wounds without a second thought, the way you reach for something you've used 1,000 times and know exactly what it does. In the ancient Mediterranean world, olive oil wasn't a condiment. It was the fat the body ran on. Every meal, every day. In quantities that would make a modern nutritionist nervous. And those quantities turn out to be exactly right. Olive oil's primary fat, oleic acid, reduces the oxidation of LDL cholesterol. Oxidized LDL is the specific form that embeds in arterial walls and begins the cascade that leads to atherosclerotic plaque. Not LDL itself, oxidized LDL. The polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil, oleocanthal in particular, also suppress the endothelial inflammation that initiates arterial damage in the first place. A 2010 study in the journal Atherosclerosis found that regular olive oil consumption measurably reduced multiple cardiovascular risk markers simultaneously. How the ancient world used it is exactly how you should. 2 to 4 tablespoons of cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil every day. Pour it over bread the way the ancient world did. Use it as a dressing. Finish cooked vegetables with it after the heat is off. The label matters. Cold-pressed, extra virgin, dark bottle. Those aren't marketing words. They tell you whether the oleocanthal is still active. 2. Garlic. Numbers 11:5. The Israelites are in the wilderness, and they cry out not for meat, not for water, but specifically for the garlic they left behind in Egypt. They name it. Among everything they've lost, garlic makes the list by name. You don't weep for an ingredient unless your body knows what it does. Garlic contains allicin, a sulfur compound that forms only when a clove is crushed or chopped, when the cell walls break and two previously separated compounds meet for the first time. That contact is what creates the medicine. Allicin inhibits platelet aggregation, the clumping of blood platelets that leads to clot formation. It reduces the stickiness of blood at the vessel wall level, lowering the risk of the clot that actually causes most heart attacks. Not the plaque itself, but the clot that forms on top of a ruptured plaque and blocks the artery in minutes. Garlic also lowers homocysteine, a cardiovascular risk marker that standard cholesterol panels often miss entirely. A meta-analysis of 39 randomized controlled trials found garlic supplementation significantly reduced systolic blood pressure, LDL, and C-reactive protein simultaneously. For daily use, the key is the crush. You have to crush or finely chop the clove and then let it sit for 10 minutes before any heat touches it. If you drop a whole clove straight into a hot pan, you get the flavor but not the medicine. Crush it, wait, then cook. 2 to 4 cloves a day is what the research points to. Raw is more potent. A clove minced into olive oil and eaten on bread is exactly how the ancient world consumed it. The Israelites wept for garlic in a desert. Their bodies remembered what they were missing before their minds did. 3. Pomegranate. The spies Moses sent into Canaan came back carrying 3 things as proof that the land was everything God promised: grapes, figs, and pomegranates. Numbers 13:23. They cut down a single cluster of grapes so large it took 2 men to carry it on a pole between them. Alongside it, pomegranates and figs, 3 fruits chosen as evidence that the Promised Land was worth everything it would cost to take it. Pomegranate contains punicalagins, compounds with 3 times the antioxidant capacity of red wine or green tea. A 2004 study published in Clinical Nutrition followed patients with carotid artery stenosis, dangerous narrowing of the artery supplying the brain. After 1 year of daily pomegranate juice, the study found a 30% reduction in carotid intima media thickness, the actual measurable thickness of arterial plaque. Not just slowed growth, reversal. It remains one of the only natural substances ever shown to physically reverse arterial plaque. Daily use. Half a pomegranate eaten fresh daily delivers what the study subjects consumed. The whole seeds, arils, are the most complete delivery method. In winter, when fresh pomegranates aren't available, pure pomegranate concentrate diluted in water. The fruit the spies carried back from the Promised Land as evidence of God's provision contains the compound that cardiologists are now studying as evidence that arteries can actually heal. 4. Walnuts. Song of Solomon 6:11. I went down to the grove of nut trees to look at the new growth in the valley. Walnut groves grew throughout the ancient Near East, and the nuts were a staple, eaten at every meal, carried on journeys, pressed into oil. Walnuts are the only nut with a significant amount of ALA, the plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. But what walnuts bring that fish don't is arginine, an amino acid the body uses to produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the molecule that tells the arteries to relax. It dilates blood vessels, reduces vascular resistance, and lowers blood pressure through a mechanism entirely distinct from any pharmaceutical blood pressure medication. A 2019 study in the Journal of the American Heart Association found that replacing saturated fat with walnuts measurably improved endothelial function. About a handful, roughly 7 whole walnuts, daily. Raw, not roasted. Roasting oxidizes the very fats that make walnuts valuable. Store them in the refrigerator or freezer. Walnut oil goes rancid faster than almost any other nut. The ancient world kept them in clay jars and ate them the way we might eat crackers, a handful with bread, a handful with fruit, a handful at the end of a meal. The grove the beloved walked through in Solomon's poem was providing a daily handful that was doing something precise and measurable to the arteries of everyone who walked through it. 5. Fish. The disciples had been fishing all night on the Sea of Galilee and caught nothing. A figure on the shore told them to cast the net on the other side. John 21. The net came up so full they couldn't haul it in. Fish fed the ancient world around that sea in a way that modern populations have almost entirely abandoned. It was the primary protein of the region, broiled, salted, dried, eaten at every meal. EPA and DHA, the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids concentrated in fatty fish, reduce serum triglycerides more effectively than almost any other dietary intervention. They also have anti-arrhythmic properties, stabilizing the electrical signals in cardiac muscle that prevent the irregular heartbeats that cause sudden cardiac death. The GISSI-Prevenzione trial followed 11,324 patients who had survived a recent heart attack. Those who supplemented with omega-3s had a 45% reduction in sudden cardiac death. 45%. Small fatty fish eaten whole, sardines, anchovies, mackerel, herring, provide the highest EPA and DHA with the lowest mercury exposure. A tin of sardines in olive oil on bread covers most of what the research describes. The disciples who hauled that net in just ate what the sea gave them every morning. That frequency is exactly what the cardiovascular research supports. Quick pause, because I want to make sure you're actually using this, not just watching it. The first 5 foods work on 5 completely different mechanisms. Olive oil protects LDL from oxidizing. Garlic stops platelets from clumping. Pomegranate physically reduces existing plaque. Walnuts keep arteries relaxed. Fish prevents the electrical failures that cause sudden cardiac death. If you have a specific cardiovascular concern, the mechanism tells you where to start. Write down the one that matches your situation. Sources I trust for each of these in their most active forms are linked in the description below. Now, the next 5. 6. Barley. Ruth 2. Naomi and Ruth have returned to Bethlehem, destitute, at the beginning of the barley harvest. Ruth asks permission to glean in the fields, to follow behind the harvesters and pick up what they leave. Boaz notices her. He tells his workers to leave extra. At mealtime, he invites her to eat beside them. The barley they were harvesting contains beta-glucan, a soluble fiber that binds to bile acids in the digestive system and removes them from the body. The liver then draws LDL cholesterol from the bloodstream to manufacture replacement bile acids, reducing circulating LDL as a direct mechanical consequence. The FDA has approved a health claim for beta-glucan. Foods containing 3 grams of soluble fiber from whole oat or barley per day may reduce the risk of heart disease. That is the only cholesterol-related health claim the FDA has ever approved for a whole food. Not a drug, not a supplement, a grain. Whole barley cooked like rice, simmered in broth, eaten as a grain bowl, or added to soups, provides the highest beta-glucan concentration. Whole barley is the intact grain, the one closest to what Ruth gathered. Pearl barley has had the outer bran removed. A half cup of cooked whole barley daily delivers the 3 grams the research identifies as the threshold dose. A love story set against a backdrop of cardiology. The grain that fed them was doing something to their arteries no one in that field would have had a word for. 7. Grapes. John 15:1. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Grapes and vineyards run through Scripture the way olive trees run through the Mediterranean landscape. In every register, every season. The fruit of the vine at the Passover table, the vineyard of Naboth, the enormous cluster the spies carried from Canaan. Grape skins contain resveratrol and oligomeric proanthocyanidins, OPCs. Resveratrol activates a protein called SIRT1 that regulates cardiovascular aging and inflammation at the cellular level. OPCs inhibit LDL oxidation and reduce platelet aggregation, without aspirin's gastric side effects. Pharmaceutical companies have attempted to synthesize resveratrol as a standalone drug. They couldn't outperform the grape. For daily use, the skin is the medicine. Dark red and black grapes have significantly higher resveratrol content than green. Eating them whole, skin, seeds, and all, delivers the complete compound profile. The seeds contain OPCs in their highest concentration. Most people spit them out and discard the most cardiovascular active part of the fruit. A large handful of dark grapes daily. Raisins concentrate the compounds but also concentrate the sugar. A small handful of raisins rather than a large one. The ancient world dried grapes precisely because they needed to eat them year-round. That instinct was correct. 8. Almonds. Number 17:8. Overnight, Aaron's rod, a dry almond branch cut from a living tree, budded, blossomed, and produced ripe almonds. Life from something that had no business producing it. Genesis 43:11. Jacob sends almonds to Egypt as one of the finest products of the land. Gift quality. The ancient world carried almonds across deserts as tribute because they knew what they were worth. Almonds are the richest nut source of vitamin E, specifically alpha-tocopherol, the form most protective against LDL oxidation. They contain monounsaturated fats in the same profile as olive oil, and plant sterols that compete with cholesterol for absorption. A 2015 meta-analysis in the Journal of the American Heart Association found that daily almond consumption significantly reduced LDL, total cholesterol, and non-HDL cholesterol without affecting HDL. About 23 whole almonds, roughly 28 grams, daily. Raw, not roasted, not salted. The heat of roasting oxidizes the vitamin E that makes the cardiovascular protection specific. Jacob sent raw almonds to Egypt. The ancient world didn't roast their medicine. Almonds eaten with a meal slow the glycemic response of everything else on the plate, another mechanism that protects the arterial endothelium. A dry branch from a dead tree producing ripe almonds overnight. The miracle was the image. The medicine was always in the nut. 9. Figs. Abigail packed fig cakes when she was moving fast and needed to provision men in the field. 1 Samuel 25:18. Isaiah laid them on Hezekiah's wound in 2 Kings 27. Figs appear at the moments when the body needs something reliable, when travel, crisis, or illness demands food that actually does something. Figs are exceptionally high in potassium, a mineral that counteracts the vasoconstricting effects of sodium and directly lowers blood pressure through its action on arterial smooth muscle. They contain soluble pectin fiber that reduces total cholesterol through bile acid binding. A 2021 study in Nutrients found fig leaf extract reduced both fasting blood glucose and C-reactive protein simultaneously. 2 to 3 fresh figs daily. In season, eaten fresh. Out of season, 2 dried figs rather than a handful. Fig leaf tea. Leaves simmered in water for 20 minutes, delivers the chlorogenic acid that the 2021 study identified. The ancient world used the whole tree, not just the fruit. That instinct was correct. 10. Black seed. Isaiah 28:25-27. The prophet describes a farmer planting fitches, the ancient name for Nigella sativa, and then describes precisely how to harvest it, beaten with a rod, not threshed. The detail is too specific to be incidental. This was a plant the ancient world treated with the care you give to something that works. Thymoquinone, the primary active compound in black seed, has reduced LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, and systolic blood pressure simultaneously in clinical trials. Those 3 markers represent the 3 primary independent cardiovascular risk factors cardiologists treat, usually with 3 separate drugs. A 2016 meta-analysis in the Journal of Hypertension confirmed all 3 effects in human subjects. For daily use, half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of whole black seeds daily, sprinkled on bread, stirred into yogurt, pressed into a warm drink with honey, exactly as the ancient world consumed them. The cold-pressed oil is more concentrated. Half a teaspoon of black seed oil delivers the equivalent thymoquinone of a larger amount of seeds. Isaiah described the harvest of this plant for an audience that cultivated it carefully because it worked. 3,000 years before the first lipid panel, the ancient world was growing a plant that does what cardiologists spend careers trying to achieve with pharmacology, and they were sprinkling it on their bread every morning. 10 foods, and what you're left with, when you look at them together, is not a list of superfoods in the modern marketing sense of that word. It's a complete cardiovascular system. Oxidation prevention, platelet aggregation reduction, blood pressure management, arterial plaque reversal, endothelial function, cholesterol reduction, anti-arrhythmic protection. 10 foods covering 10 different pathways, eaten daily, in a world where heart disease was not the leading cause of death. The ancient world wasn't eating well by accident. They had a food system built on millennia of observation. We have the clinical trials now to understand each mechanism. What we've done with that knowledge is largely put it in bottles and sell it in health food stores at $30 a jar. The ancient world just ate. Start with 1. Whichever mechanism matches your situation, that's the one. Add olive oil to every meal this week. Crush garlic and let it sit before you cook. Buy a pomegranate. The ancient world didn't overhaul their diet all at once. They were born into it. You can rebuild that, one food at a time, starting with what's already in your kitchen. If something in this changed the way you think about what you eat, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to keep finding what's been hiding in plain sight in Scripture, subscribe and hit the bell. Every week we pull up a chair and look more closely at what the ancient world already knew. The table is set. Come sit down.